All right, welcome back. For those who want to know more about ChatGPT for genealogy, there is a course in my academy that you might like to enroll in, and it's an on-demand type of course. You can take it up at any time and learn at your own pace, and you can have it forever. As some of my learners have told me, they've gone back to it several times. In it, you'll also learn how to use your own GPTs inside ChatGPT-4. And if you're interested in enrolling there and you want to get a bit of a discount, when you get to the checkout, use the discount code AI 2024. So write that down if you are interested in getting that little bit of a discount on that course. So that's ChatGPT for genealogy at my Essential Genealogy Academy. Right, let's move on. Let's have a look at Claude, my new favorite assistant. Once again, I'm going to focus on the process. However, I did want to pick up on a few things that Claude tells me itself, that it can streamline my storytelling by providing intelligent real-time feedback and transform my ideas into compelling narratives. That's exactly what I need. It's an advanced natural language processing, and it ensures that the story flows seamlessly, and I've found that to be true. It does have a more user-friendly interface than ChatGPT, and it makes writing more intuitive and enjoyable. So you could use it for writing a novel, your ancestral stories, a business proposal, a blog, anything at all, and it will help elevate your writing. So that's what we're about to experience today. So I'm going to step through how Claude helped me with another story. In this case, I'm going to show you how it helped me start writing my great-grandmother's story, and a sample prompt in the document, similar to the other ones. Anything in the square brackets, you just change to suit who you want it to help write about. And having that starting prompt really does help, I find, if you're at the beginning of your journey. So let's pop over to Claude, see if he is still awake. Might need to shake him up a little bit. Here we go. It looks a little different on screen to ChatGPT, but I can show you that it does have my previous conversations showing on the left-hand side, and I can have that showing all the time, or I can turn it off as I've done today, so that just focuses in on the response. But here's where Claude differs. Over here on the top right, you'll see I'm clicking on what's called chat controls. It includes now anything that it has built for me, like the biography template for Emma, a research plan, life timeline. So these are its answers to my prompts about getting a story for Emma. And on the left-hand side, it tells you what it's going to do, reiterates the information you've given it, which is the bare bones, as you see up here in my prompt, and then goes on to say, this is a good starting point. To create a more comprehensive biography, you might want to consider the following details. And of course, I have these, but I'm wanting this to be pertinent to those at the beginning. So you'll need some family background. You'll need to know about marriages. Who did she marry? How many times maybe? Who are her children? Names and birth years, etc. Occupation, residences, major life events, her death, and so on. Then it says, to gather this information, you might want to consider census records, birth, marriage, and death. So typical things that we would do automatically as researchers. But for someone new, this has given them thoughts about what they would do and where they would go to find them. Over here on the right, if I open up that template and scroll to the top, now it is in narrative format. Her early life, her family life, And it's gleaned all this information from information I've given it, the children's names, a little bit about our adult life, but it still doesn't know enough to give me broader context. But it's putting in a little historical context and a little bit about her passing away. So you see the difference that this tool is giving us. It's more educational and instructional over here on the left, and here is what we'd asked for. This is the output. And in a similar way to ChatGPT, we can, if we want all the formatting, I always suggest that you highlight and scroll through the whole thing and do Control-C, so that when you paste it somewhere like a Google Doc, it will also have the formatting in place. If you just use the small copy contents icon at the very bottom, it won't give you the formatting. So that's the same in chat. Be mindful of that when you're using the content. All right, the next thing, I wanted a basic structure for her biography and created in narrative format. And I tried this from Ancestry that I mentioned before. I took a register and downloaded it as a PDF, but it couldn't deal with that document. But it apologizes for it, which is nice to know. And then goes on to say, I'd be happy to suggest a basic structure, and it can create a brief narrative. It tells me now that it's created this template and telling me that to make it more comprehensive, I need to research, look for certain documents and so on. With me so far? All right, so when I did this, it was able to give me a greater response. This time I've simply copied the data from Ancestry's register, which tells it all of the children for that ancestor, and now it can create a biography. It's updated the biography based on that information and suggests that we could improve it with family origins, something about early motherhood. And this was an interesting aspect that I hadn't really noticed in the documentation, that both Sarah Jane and Fanny were born before Emma's marriage to Harry. Now this happens. Have I got my facts right though? I need to go back and have a look at that. Then it says, what about the relocation? The family moved from Hampshire to Surrey. So what prompted that move? And that set me off on another little journey about, well, what could I write about there that I had enough information about? Occupation for her, well, apart from being a mother, nothing that I know of. Historical context and her children's lives. So it's telling me that I can enrich that biography by looking deeper. And then in most cases, it will finish with a sentence like this. Would you like me to focus on any particular aspect of Emma's life for further development? Which I can do. So for example, with an uploaded digital image of the 1901 census, I can ask it to provide an overview of life in both Andover and Kingston in those centuries. And then say the family moved from Hampshire to Surrey. Could you investigate what might have prompted this move, perhaps job opportunities or other family connections? I could have worded that a little better, but it's done a fine job with that. Or it did once I gave it the information that it needed. It has difficulty with some documents that it uploads. It's not as clever as ChatGPT in that respect. But what it's done here is now given me some general insights about the move from Hampshire to Surrey, such as urbanisation, employment opportunities, transportation. And that was the one that I focused on, because the expansion of the railways then would have made it possible for them to relocate fairly easily. Family size, housing, and so on. We're getting a rich picture now of how we can develop this story. To get around some of this historical context, this is the next prompt that I gave it. Can you provide an overview of life in Thruxton, Andover, as well as Kingston in the UK in the early 20th centuries, focusing on these aspects that might have affected my great-grandmother's life? So I'm being more specific now: cultural, industrial, economic, and political. So then it goes on to give me exactly that. Rural village life. Church likely played a central role. Which church? I need to go and find that out. Industrial and economic. Diverse economy with manufacturing, retail, and service industries. And that becomes important when I look at the history of my great-grandfather, Emma's husband, Harry, who is a builder and ironmonger. The political aspects, certainly women's suffrage movement was around the early part of 20th century, and how it might have affected my great-grandmother's life. Moving from one place to another, technological advancement, and so on. So you can see how it's scoping the story for me. And now I want a comprehensive narrative about the key changes affecting my great-grandmother's life. And I've picked up on 3 of those aspects that it listed above. And there it is. Over here on the right-hand side, based on what we know about Emma and her period, can you suggest specific types of records or resources I should look for to learn more about her life? And it gives me those. A lot of these I already have, but it's a good reminder and things that might be missing in my records. An interesting touch was asking it to create a research plan, and this is the result of that one. It can generate a response in tabular format, just like chat can, and you can copy that and put it into a spreadsheet, for example, and that might help me identify where the gaps are. So I didn't know if I had the baptism for Emma and her children. That will take me to the next piece of research that I need to do. And in the prompt, I asked it to create this list with a blank at the right-hand side, so that when I copy all of this, and I do it this way, I can then paste that into a spreadsheet and it will put it into columns for me. So that becomes a research plan, which really does help in moving then to the next stages of the story creation. So that's my prompt. Prepare a research plan that encompasses these suggestions and provided in tabular display. It then describes what's in the research plan and what to do with it. So I'm scrolling fairly fast. You won't have time to read it all, but you get the idea that it's doing more than creating an output. It's teaching you what you can do next from its own knowledge database about what genealogy and research and storytelling is all about. Again, it finishes with a question: would you like any advice on how to begin using this research plan or how to access any specific types of records? In this next one, I have then found the baptism record for Emma, and there wasn't much information in it that I didn't already know, but this time I'm asking it, help me understand what the social and legal requirements for baptism is at that time. And then can you transcribe the baptism record in tabular format? It seemed to deal with this very easily. And it's dealt with the first piece about social and legal requirements for baptism, some things that I already knew and others that I did not. I can use that information to help me plan the next part of the story and use that data inside the story. The next thing that I asked it to do was to create a timeline of Emma's life. So it did that and provided a text-based timeline and with neat little icons to indicate births, marriages, special things that happened historically, and death. So an interesting bit of text that I could use in my story. And once again, to make sure that I've got all of those little icons, I would need to highlight and Control-C to the keyboard, etc. We continue on, and you'll see that this is quite a long process, but it really only took a day to do this. So based on what we know about Emma and her time, can you help me develop a more detailed character profile for her? Let's consider her likely personality traits, values, and daily life. Certainly, it said, and it came up with this character profile. Now, some of it will be a bit flimsy because it doesn't know enough about her, but it's made some observations. She must be resilient. She's had 10 children over 23 years and moved from rural to urban. She's a mother, she's a nurturer, she's practical, she manages a household of 10 children. She's hardworking, she's adaptable, and certainly patient. These are aspects that I would like to think I could attribute to my great-grandmother. What values? Her family, community, tradition, education, and so on. All of these are values that I hadn't really thought about. You see what it's doing? It's prompting me to write with more detail that I can generate for my grandmother, great-grandmother. Daily life, certainly household management would feature, childcare, shopping, social interactions, and possible part-time work. Evening activities, yes, possibly including family time, sewing or mending by candlelight and preparing for the next day, and so on. She would have faced challenges of health, financial, societal, urbanisation, and technological. And potential interests or skills would be in the line of domestic crafts, herbal remedies, storytelling, budgeting, and cooking. Interesting aspects. So once again, if I need that in its entirety with all of its formatting, Control-C is the way to go. I'll just come back to screen here. And whether you've got some questions or what you've learned about Claude in that few minutes that I've demonstrated for you.